This is part 2 of the presidency review. I ended with this slide last time, and I do want you to understand the West Wing. If you are looking at this picture of the White House, this portion right here is the Truman balcony, and this area right here is considered the front or the north side. The East Wing contains Mrs. Obama's staff, and that is where she works. It's also the large reception area. But this area over here, and I'm sorry, this one is to the east room. But this part, if you ever hear about the West Wing, that is where the president actually works. And this Oval Office right here looks out onto the Rose Garden area. So I'm going to expand this view, and I want to focus on this area. This portion of the White House is very small. I don't want you to think this is a grand, huge place to work. They are very tiny cubicles because they're so limited on space, and the staff has grown so much over the years. If anyone has an office in any of these areas, then they are considered quite powerful, and this goes to the notion that proximity is power. If you come in this lobby area, really there's only several hallways in the West Wing. There's multiple floors, but they're just going to show the first floor on this left portion. Probably one of the most famous rooms is the Roosevelt Room. This is a room where they have informal meetings. Sometimes heads of state meet here to go over treaties. It's really just a very formal conference room for the president and their aides. If you walk down the hallway, the cabinet room is right here. That is where a lot of famous photo shots have been taken of the president's cabinet when he meets with them, and you'll see a lot of crowded cameramen and aides lining the walls. If you go down the hallway, and right here, this is where the president's press secretary works, and then if you go out here, this is where the press pool is, and it doesn't show on the map, but that's the location of it. Going back here, if you walk down the hallway, the Oval Office is just right here. It's quite tiny, and off to this is the president's study and a little kitchenette area. But these two rooms, this is also a little study room too. That's really his main work area. He does have the study, which he tends to use, and then also other rooms in the White House, especially the second floor, which is a family living area. But again, the National Security Advisor, Secretary of State, might have a small office. She has a state building, or he does, Secretary Kerry, that they can work in. But this right here, I just want you to be aware of, again, proximity is power. And if you have an office in the West Wing, you must have a lot of influence over the president. This picture right here was from the first administration. There's no updated pic just like this one, but these are some of the people that were very close to President Obama. Chief of Staff, I have a picture, is now this person, Dennis McDonough, but he is Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel is now the mayor of Chicago. Senior advisors still exist. David Axelrod. Senior advisor Valerie Jarrett still exists as well. National Security Advisor has changed. His personal aide Reggie Love is with him quite a bit in the background of pictures, and he golfs with them, goes to basketball games, things like that. Remember, key part here is if they're in the executive office, they are the president's personal staff, and they do not need Senate confirmation. The people who work in the West Wing are loyal to Obama. They want him to succeed, and they are part of his inner circle. So if they're the West Wing, then they are definitely there to help promote the president's agenda. Very, very loyal. That differs from the cabinet position. The cabinet is appointed. Sometimes it's a political move, and they're there for Senate confirmation. So the most loyal out of all of these would be his White House staff. This is another picture. I just wanted to see, and there was a link there to the picture that I just showed you. There's a different view again, the Oval Office, and looking onto the famous colonnade, walkway, and the Rose Garden. This is a live shot. That's how small you can see the White House. Here's the Truman balcony. And then again, the formal reception area. The press stands over here to the left every night when they show a live shot in front of the White House. That's usually where they sit. Okay, the last couple things I want to go over besides the White House office are the National Security Council. They are there to advise the president on domestic and foreign policy matters. They are huge on national security. This is our current Joint Chiefs of Staff chair, who is Staff Army General Dempsey. Not that you need to know that name, I just want you to know that if you hear about the National Security Council, they are foremost in advising the president on national security. I'm going to switch now to this last part. These are your AP presidency notes. Please make sure that you go over these. We have gone over almost everything. Commander-in-Chief, the War Powers Resolution is crucial. All the different roles. The line item veto. Patronage. Emergency executive powers, executive privilege. Impoundment of funds, that's when the president refuses to spend money that Congress has already approved, and I mentioned that in the bureaucracy review. The last thing right here, the White House office, those are the ones closest to the president. The cabinet, although the Constitution does not include the word cabinet, it does state the president may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments. That has led to the tradition of the cabinet, which was started by George Washington and has continued during every president's administration. The executive office of the president, nicknamed the EOP, is there to provide staff assistance for the chief executive and to help coordinate the executive bureaucracy. So that is a piece in there that you have to deal with the administrative side of running the presidency, and that would fall to the EOP. The White House office, again, is what I just mentioned earlier, containing the chief of staff, the different secretaries, the press secretary, many that are very loyal to the president. The top economic advisor would be the Council of Economic Advisors, which is a small group of individuals appointed by the president, normally with the president's view, supporting the president's view on the economy, and they give advice to the president directly on economic policy. So that is who he would go to and who he would really trust rather than the Department of the Treasury, Secretary of the Treasury, or even Congress. He would go to his CEA, the Council of Economic Advisors. The National Security Council, again made up of the President, Vice President, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, other informal members maybe of the White House office. They would be going into the Situation Room in times of national security crisis to make decisions on behalf of our country. They also have aiding them the National Security Agency, and I'll highlight that real quick. The National Security Agency is there. They're sort of our spying arm for overseas missions, so the NSA helps as well. The last things I want to talk about just real quickly, the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, is the president's arm in deciding budget. Remember, the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, is the congressional side. They propose their budget, but really, the Constitution charges the president with coming up with his own budget, and therefore that falls under the Office of Management and Budget. That is very crucial to the budget process, and they normally start that in January, and we'll talk later about that. But they really are instrumental in forming that the federal budget. And I just briefly mentioned some other offices. I'm not going to necessarily have you know these, but really the ones I've highlighted are key. The last is the Vice President, and I would like to talk about his job briefly because it is specific in two things. The Constitution does not give the Vice President a lot of power, so he's nothing, but he's everything because he is the one that has to be president in case of a national crisis. So it says vice presidents have been chosen by nominees normally to balance the ticket to attract different voters or to appease party factions. In recent presidential elections, vice presidents have been selected for other reasons. It could be youth, it could be foreign policy, For example, President Obama was not strong in foreign policy, so they chose Senator Biden, who was chair of the Foreign Relations Committee for a very long time and had some knowledge regarding that area. Typically, vice presidents spend the time supporting the president's activities. They will fill in when the president gives the vice president a specific task to do. Maybe they will be in charge of a commission or an investigation or something along those lines, but they really are there at the mercy of the president. Two things the Constitution says the president has to do. He is president of the Senate, and he will replace the president if anything should happen to them. The order of succession, and I do want you to be familiar with these. There are several test questions here. The 25th Amendment, remember I said I know the first two, the president and the vice president, but who are the next five? So you need to know the order of succession. And briefly listed here are the areas in which the order of succession would take place. This is the line, and I'm pretty sure this is an EOC question or has been in the past, as well as one that we need to talk about. But if the president and vice president should die, the Speaker of the House is next, then the President pro temp of the Senate, and then the cabinet in the order that their office was created. So Vice President, Speaker, Pro Temp, Secretary of State, Treasury, and so on. And that was outlined in the Succession Act of 1947. So that is just a basic nutshell on the very last part of the presidency. If you have any questions, please email me and let me know.